Coming up today, President Park Geun-hye reiterates her call for strong and effective international sanctions to punish North Korea for its latest nuclear test. The chairman of Korea's main opposition party says he will step down. Moon Jae-in has vowed to go once the party gets on a more stable footing ahead of crunch elections this spring. Plus, China's economy grew by 6.9% in 2015 compared with 7.3% the year before, marking the slowest growth in a quarter of a century. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Wednesday, January 20th here in Seoul. Thank you ever so much for joining us. I'm Mark Broom. Our top story this morning, President Park Geun-hye is calling for full-scale diplomatic efforts towards stronger and more comprehensive UN sanctions on North Korea for the nuclear test it conducted 2 weeks ago. Song Ji-sun starts us off.
President Park Geun-hye maintained her firm stance against North Korea's fourth nuclear test conducted 2 weeks ago. At the third cabinet meeting of the year, the president directed government ministers to work closely with the South allies to come up with sanctions that will actually change the North.
만약 이번에도 강력하고 실효적인 조치들이 도출되지 못한다면 5차, 6차 핵실험을 해도 국제사회가 자신을 어쩌지 못할 것이다 하는 잘못된 신호를 북한에 주게 될 것입니다. 이번에야말로 자신들의 잘못된 행동이 어떤 결과를 가져오는지를 북한이 확실하게 깨달을 수 있게 해야 할 것입니다.
She also called for full military readiness against any North Korean provocation, both on the border and online, to guard against cyber attacks. Shifting to domestic politics, the president reiterated her call on the parliament to pass a slate of long-pending economy-related bills. She said this should be the year people feel the effects of the reforms outlined in her 3-year economic innovation plan, and for that to happen, the related bills must be implemented as soon as possible. On Monday, the president had joined a public petition drive urging lawmakers to pass economy-related bills, and on Tuesday, she called on them to at least move forward with the labor reform package during next month's extraordinary session. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Now, Korea will hold another nationwide sales event ahead of the Lunar New Year's holiday. The Korea Grand Sale returns next Monday and runs through February 7th. It will offer shoppers special discounts and deals with up to 50% off lots of local products. The government says some 2,500 businesses, including traditional markets, will take part. Shoppers will also get the added benefit of up to 2 hours of free parking near traditional market sites. Korea has hosted similar events, including the K-Sale Day and Korea Black Friday, to help retailers overcome sluggish domestic consumption last year in the wake of the MERS outbreak. A hard-fought agreement between the government, Labour and management looks doomed after the Federation of Korean Trade Unions announced it was withdrawing from the Tripartite deal. The Labour Union said Tuesday that the deal was signed, since the deal was signed last September, the government has been pushing labour reforms without consulting with unions or other labour activist groups. However, Labour Minister Lee Ki-kwon says the FKTU has been rejecting further participation in the trilateral talks since last month. The minister urged the umbrella union to come back to the negotiating table out of respect for their grand social compromise. Now, last fall's groundbreaking deal was reached in order to make Korea's labour market more flexible by implementing measures like cutting down weekly working hours and introducing a so-called wage peak system. Moon Jae-in, chairman of Korea's main opposition party, says he's going to resign from his post to give the party a better shot of victory in upcoming elections. The Minju Party of Korea has been rocked by a series of high-profile defections in recent weeks. For more on the implications of Mr. Moon's decision, Shin Se-min reports.
The chairman of the main opposition Minju Party of Korea says he is willing to step down from his post, but not just yet. Speaking at a press conference on Tuesday, Moon Jae-in said there is no reason for him to hold on to the position.
I will resign as soon as the party's new leadership takes shape. I'm sure that my decision will benefit the party.
Moon stopped short of offering a target date for when the interim party leadership would be ready to take over. He did say, however, that he hopes his departure will both unite the party and consolidate the opposition bloc, including the People's Party launched by An Chol-soo. An, who once co-chaired the party, walked away from it last month over a leadership dispute with Moon, prompting more than a dozen party members to follow suit. That, along with a widening factional rift within the party, has intensified the pressure on Moon to resign. When Moon goes, the interim leadership will be in charge of steering the party through an updated parliamentary election in April. The outgoing party chief said he is confident the party will prevail, no matter who is in charge, but vowed to shoulder the responsibility in any case.
Even if I'm not in the leadership position, I will take full and infinite responsibility for the outcome of the April general elections.
Moon also said he sees the election as an opportunity for the Minju Party of Korea to heal the political divisions splitting the country. But it's too early to say whether his resignation will be enough to end the exodus and unite the party in time for the elections in April. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Now, Russia is calling for the North Korean nuclear issue to be resolved through dialogue among the members of the six-party nuclear talks. This is according to South Korea's top nuclear envoy Hwang Jung-guk, who held consultations with his Russian counterpart Igor Mogilov in Moscow on Tuesday to seek Moscow's support for further sanctions against North Korea. Hwang said the two sides agreed the UN Security Council must take firm action in response to North Korea's fourth nuclear test early this month. However, many experts in Seoul say Russia, a veto-wielding permanent member of the Council, wants to solve the problem through dialogue, not sanctions. A senior US diplomat is in Seoul as the two allies look to coordinate their response to North Korea's fourth nuclear test. The provocation has severely raised tension in the region, but South Korea and the US know they are going to need China's cooperation to ensure Pyongyang is punished in any meaningful way. Connie Kim has the details.
South Korea and the United States are still working on ways to persuade China that it's time North Korea be hit with the toughest sanctions yet in the wake of its recent nuclear test. U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Tony Blinken is in Seoul on a two-day visit for talks with South Korea's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se and Vice Foreign Minister Im Seong-nam.
South Korea and the U.S. will focus on ways to cooperate in response to North Korea's nuclear test, including a UN Security Council resolution.
Following his talks in Seoul, Blinken will travel to Beijing on Wednesday for talks with Chinese Vice Foreign Minister Chang Ye-sui. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry will also visit China next week to pressure Beijing to join the other members of the six-party nuclear talks in punishing Pyongyang for its latest provocation. China has emphasized the need for an appropriate level of UN measures, while South Korea, the U.S. and Japan are pushing for stronger and comprehensive sanctions. South Korea will continue its efforts to bring out a strong and effective UN Security Council resolution on North Korea, as it's set to hold a series of meetings with members of the UN Security Council in New York through Wednesday. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
The International Monetary Fund has cut this year's growth outlook for the global economy to 3.4%. That's a 0.2 percentage point trim from an earlier forecast released in October. For 2017, the IMF expects the world economy to grow 3.6%, also down 0.2 percentage points from its previous projection. The cuts were attributed to China's slowdown and low commodities prices, which are dragging down growth in emerging economies as well as the strengthening US dollar. And the Chinese economy expanded at its slowest pace in a quarter of a century last year, but as the growth figure widely matched expectations, Korea's financial markets took the news on the chin, but experts say lingering uncertainties do remain. Our Hang Jie has the details.
China grew 6.9% in 2015, marking its weakest annual expansion in a quarter of a century. The slowdown comes as the world's second largest economy moves to a safer and more sustainable growth model focused on domestic consumption over government investment.
The industrial sector saw growth of 27.42 trillion yuan, up 6% from the previous year, and the service sector saw growth of 34.17 trillion yuan, up 8.3% from the previous year.
Chinese slowing growth figures, however, raised investors' hopes for a fresh round of stimulus measures, sending local shares up 3.2%. The latest data were also in line with what most economists have been expecting. Given that, Korea's stock market remained relatively calm following the news from China, with the benchmark index edging up 0.6% on Tuesday. Still, experts are skeptical about whether the current trend will continue, especially in the face of plunging oil prices, which are expected to go lower after international sanctions on Iran were lifted over the weekend.
Local shares will remain jittery, given the lingering worries about crude oil prices falling below the $20 mark.
It was one of the worst beginnings to a year, not just for Korean shares, but global stocks extended their slide into a third week as oil prices slid to a fresh 12-year low. And when will we see the light after this seemingly endless tunnel? Experts say it won't come until sometime during or even after the second quarter. Hwang Jie, Arirang News.
Now, as a follow-up to that report, really, oil prices are set to fall even further this year as supply is vastly exceeding global demand. The International Energy Agency says unless something changes, the oil market could drown in oversupply this year, with oil prices forecast to tumble further below the key $30 a barrel level it broke in recent days. The Energy Monitor warned that as the oil market faces the prospect of a third consecutive year of supply exceeding demand by 1 million barrels per day, there will be enormous strain on its ability to absorb it efficiently. It said excess supply could even reach 1.5 million barrels per day in the first half of the year. Crude oil prices have plunged over the last 18 months on vast new oil supplies from inside and outside the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, or OPEC. Now, there has been a rapid expansion in the number of mobile payment options popping up on the market. You'd expect Korea, known for being arguably the most wired nation in the world, to have already kissed goodbye to plastic, but many Koreans have been fairly slow on the uptake of this new technology, as our Kwon Jang-ho reports.
Instead of reaching for the wallet, more and more people are pulling out their phones when approaching the payment counter. A recent survey conducted by the Bank of Korea found that 1 in 6 adults are now using mobile payment services for both online and offline purchases. It's a relatively new trend that's come with the rise of smartphones and digital wallet services such as Samsung and Apple Pay. Over half of users said they had only started using mobile payment options within the last year. Among them, 44% said they use the service up to 3 times a month and 23% up to twice a week. Industry data shows that over $5 billion worth of shopping was done on mobile phones with mobile payment services in the third quarter of 2015, up 58% from the previous year. Mobile banking is also widely used these days. There are over 60 million mobile banking accounts in Korea, and according to the central bank survey, nearly half of respondents use the services at least twice a week. But there are still many who've chosen not to make the digital leap. When asked why, they cited personal data leaks, mistrust of safety features, and mistaken transactions as their biggest concerns. A Bank of Korea official said more will need to be done to make internet banking more convenient and safe, so more consumers feel comfortable in adopting the services. Kwon Jang-ho, Arirang News.
Staggering. That's how the United Nations describes the severity of the violence suffered by civilians in Iraq. In a new report, the UN says almost 19,000 people have been killed in the country between January 2014 and October 2015. It also says the so-called Islamic State group is holding more than 3,500 women and children as slaves. The report adds that ISIS has been carrying out public executions and brutal punishments, including stoning, beheading, burning alive, and being thrown off buildings. The UN's report is mostly based on testimony from the victims, survivors, or witnesses of the violence. Well, those are the news stories we have for you at this hour on a Wednesday morning here in Seoul. For more of the latest, don't forget to check out the website. You can find that by going to arirang.com/news. Until noon Korea time. Goodbye.